We're about to talk about The View. Now, I know you, if you're watching the show, you know watching The View is traumatic enough.
Very much so.
But according to Candace Bure,
there you go.
actually being on The View is far worse. We're going to talk about how Candace Bure was traumatized by being on The View for over a year in 2015 and 16. But first, we're going to talk about some beef that is currently being stoked by a former child star who was interviewed by Candace Bure on The View. His name is Danny Pintauro. He starred in Who's the Boss in the 80s. Have you guys seen that?
I have seen Who's the Boss.
I have not.
Yeah.
He started leading a more low-profile life in young adulthood, but because of the media threatening to out him, he came out as gay in 2003, back when coming out as gay was somewhat newsworthy.
Well, yeah, like we were talking about it when Adele or who is it that Adele? No, it was what's her name from?
Not Meghan Trainor.
The other one.
Oh my gosh, there are so many. Rebel Wilson.
Rebel Wilson got threatened.
Rebel Wilson, other blonde.
Threatened into coming out.
Yes. And then in 2015, he appeared on Oprah. And he spoke out about a time in his life where he started using crystal meth and he contracted HIV during that time. So when he came out and talked about this, he had already recovered and he was already receiving treatment. He then made an appearance on The View in 2015 to talk about that diagnosis. And he was interviewed by Raven-Symoné and Candace Bure. And I believe the producers probably chose that lineup because they are all former child stars and they could probably relate on that front. But now, 7 years after that interview occurred, Danny Pintauro is saying that interview was a horrifying experience because of judgy comments that Candace Bure made toward him. And here's what he said about it on the Behind the Velvet Rope podcast. Candace Bure said, "Do you take responsibility for getting HIV because you were living a promiscuous lifestyle?"
Thank you.
And turned on the spot to my husband and said, "Do you have unprotected sex with your husband?" Correction, by the way, it was Raven-Symoné that asked that question. Yep. Not the first one, but the second one. He continued, "I mean, it was horrifying. It was one of the lowest moments of the journey I had after coming out to Oprah. And so it's not surprising to me that she's taking this stance with Christmas movies that she's going to be involved in. She must have tons of people in her life that are LGBTQ, at least from her past. And how she got to this place is just concerning to me. It's almost like she went backwards in a way." So he said that he regrets going on The View that day now, but at the time, he never told Candace Bure that what she asked him offended him. And, all sympathy due to him aside, he, I think, is obviously hopping on the Candace Bure hate bandwagon that's trending right now, rather than actually voicing a grievance that needed to be heard anywhere but in private.
Probably doesn't even remember that Raven-Symoné was there.
No, like he could have easily even gone back and watched a YouTube video of his own appearance on The View and saw that was incorrect, but instead he just twisted the story to make her look bad. Dude, I just want to watch the actual clip so we can clear her name of that one part though, and see what she actually said.
10 seconds or 15 seconds or something.
It's not long. Okay. Here.
I want to know, do you take responsibility for your actions?
100%.
For being promiscuous, going into a lifestyle of having heightened sex because of the meth that you were using?
100%.
And then wait for the Raven-Symoné question.
I want to know what the message is, because you want to be the face of HIV, to give that a face. But what is the message that you have? What does that mean?
Yeah, I don't want to be a hero, or
okay.
I don't
and then
want to
after he answers this question,
he looks like Seth Green.
Raven-Symoné points to his husband who is sitting in the audience. Raven-Symoné, who is gay herself, by the way. So I have no idea why it would be homophobic for her to ask this question. It's just invasive. She is the one who asked if they had unprotected sex. Yeah. So he is completely twisting the story to say that Candace Bure said something she didn't say.
Yeah.
And in fact, her question wasn't worded exactly the way he recalled it either. And he never had anything to say about what Candace Bure said to him before. But now that she's becoming more successful with Great American Family Network and has broken off from Hallmark, he wants an excuse to talk badly about her. He wants to make her look bad.
And it's in his wheelhouse because he's an LGBTQIA member.
He's also about to do a Lifetime movie.
Yep.
That, like, he's going to be in one of these Hallmark Lifetime style Christmas movies himself, playing an LGBT character. So he has a personal beef with her to air out. And once again, it's just the love and acceptance people in this industry going to follow Candace Bure, who disagrees with them, even after they've ostracized her.
It's just...
Like, I'm not saying that was a smart way to word her question, or even a smart thing to ask in that context of the interview. But at the same time, think about what it's like to be the conservative seat
punching
on
bag.
The View. You are the designated punching bag, but your job description is to be the one who pushes back in discussions.
Well, just so they can dunk on you because you're not actually...
Right.
Like, on The View, let's face it, you're really just... you're just a you're supposed to just be a neocon warhawk, like Meghan McCain. But, like, the funny thing about this is, like, look... As somebody in recovery, I actually winced hearing her say that out loud because nobody wants to be called out like that. So I get he's like wincing at like the pushback, you know.
The issue is he's discussing a private
matter very publicly
and becoming a spokesperson for it.
Look, that's not an easy thing to have to go through, but she worded it fairly. She was not rude. She was not inconsiderate. She just ask bluntly something very, very reasonable to ask you. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just fashionable right now to make fun of her or to hold her to some type of account, especially since I'm the resident, just like I'm the Kim Kardashian stan of this show. I'm the Candace Cameron Bure stan of this show as well. And you just leave her alone, okay? She cannot be
the ultimate simp for
She has a broad palate.
She is a sacred cow on this show. She cannot be.
Definitely.
You leave her alone.
I mean, I think it's just so funny that Candace Bure could not be less concerned with her haters, but they are absolutely obsessed with her to the point where they come up with excuses to talk badly about her, even if the story is the better part of a decade old.
Yeah.
I mean, even JoJo Siwa said that she was the rudest celebrity she had ever met because when JoJo Siwa was like 11 years old, she asked to get a picture with her. And they were on a red carpet, and Candace Bure was like, "Oh, maybe later. I'm a little busy right now."
It's like any other celebrity would just say no and walk away. She's like, "Oh, honey, not right now.
Right.
We'll do it later." Like, she's too nice. She looks like she bakes a mean chocolate chip cookie. Yeah. She really does. She looks like she is the living
She's
embodiment.
so wholesome. Just look at her.
She looks like she actually makes her own live, laugh, love plaques for the house. Like she picked up a hobby on Pinterest.
No, her husband is really good at wood carving.
And she paints them. She paints them.
Yes.
Or the kids paint them. She paints them with the kids because she's wholesome. But you know, it's not even hard to believe that a year and a half on The View, because clearly I would imagine she's actually more of a conservative than like a Meghan McCain actually is. So Meghan McCain just accepts that she's a punching bag and that's her job. She's actually cares about it, therefore PTSD.
Right. So like, I think that Candace Bure's views on religion, on social matters are nothing new, and she's always had the same convictions about traditional marriage, and she's always been Christian, but only now is she getting most viciously dragged for it. I mean, being the conservative seat on The View, specifically in 2015 and 16, would have been especially
16
bad.
16 would have been awful. I didn't know 15 too, because it would have been leading up to everything that was going on.
Yeah, being a traditional conservative voice on a show like that does actually sound kind of traumatic. And I just want to read what she has said about the experience. She said, "The stress and anxiety, I actually have a pit in my stomach right now. There was only one type of stress that I've ever felt in my life. That came from the show. And I have PTSD. I can feel it. It was so difficult to manage that emotional stress. It was very hard. When I felt like I was going into a show that I didn't have a clear opinion about it, or it was something that I was legitimately nervous to talk about, because I did have an opinion, but I knew I was the only one at the table that had my opinion, I would just get sick to my stomach. I hated that feeling. And then I'm like, I don't know who's going to come at me."
I will say that I'll push back on her a little bit. It's only so much as she'll allow me, because I'm still the stan for her. But calling it PTSD is dorky, and that's not PTSD. You took a job, grow up a little bit here. But look,
in a very minuscule way.
Yes.
I'm sure both of us can relate because we need to be informed about the things we talk about.
And
if we have an unpopular opinion, you have to be able to defend it.
every day, like, I'm sitting here giving you my opinions and one eye on the chat, looking at everyone judge you for whatever
Sure.
your views are on anything. Or, I try not to read the comments, but, every so often I
I
accidentally...
would not call it traumatic at all.
It's not traumatic. It's just part of the job. It's like, look,
Yeah.
you've accepted this as your role. I love my job. And with that love of the job comes the little things that suck about it, which is like people saying like, Brett's opinions are all, or like Brett, like what was the, like yesterday. In fact, I'll even address this from the guy yesterday who's like, Brett isn't nice to old people. Like during yesterday's show when I was like literally making fun of millennials for always like blaming boomers for stuff. Like I was like, all millennials do is complain about the housing market that boomers supposedly created, whatever it did create. And I'm like, grow up, millennials, you're annoying. And like whoever it was in the chat, bless him, was like, Brett just seems to hate old people. I'm like, I don't. Like I was gonna respond, but like I'd already ended the episode. I'm like, I can't respond now. I'm like, I don't hate anyone, but like at a certain point, it's funny. I think about the celebrities, and we push back a lot on the people that have the F your fans type attitude. But there's a certain, like, you're eventually going to get so much feedback that you have to kind of disassociate.
Yeah.
You can't be emotionally attached to either validation or pushback because you're eventually going to either be too happy all the time or too sad all the time. You have to just kind of find a neutral ground and ride the middle ground. And for her on that show, it's going to be 100 times worse. I don't know if it's PTSD worse, but it's going to be 100 times worse because they're talking about stuff that gets people way more riled up.
We have Danny Pintauro saying like, "Oh, my interview was traumatic and horrifying."
It was so horrible.
Like, you're only bringing it up because it's trendy to bring it up right now. To hate on Candace Bure because she's doing something successful on her own, independently of these mainstream networks that are now fully accepting you only because the times have changed and it's easier to sell you. Yeah. They don't care about you or your cause in any way. They're just
I don't
so
think
delusional.
he does either. If he's got this movie coming up, this is a great way to get the attention on him.
Well, yeah,
and maybe
Right.
they'll use me as a banner to celebrate
Yes.
something. It's a brilliant marketing move.
They've always got some gripe and cause to promote. Right around the time, there's also
Yeah.
a correlating movie to promote at the exact same time.
Yeah, he's like the sacrificial lamb to promote his movie. At the same time, like, he humiliates himself to sell a product.
Ritualistic humiliation at the altar of product placement.
Right.
Defense I would give her, because I'm very much on the same wavelength as far as like I'm so tired of everything being PTSD and trauma. Like, traumas exist and you can have them socially as well. They're not just war and abuse. But I could see how somebody in her position doing that job, like you said, it could be it's not just doing a show. Like if it's like if you're that person in that chair on that show, those producers are going to treat you like dog crap.
It would be
They're
interesting
going
to see
Yeah.
what
make
it
your
was
life
like
a
behind
living
the
nightmare.
scenes.
They
And-
also write the leads for the questions you're supposed
Yes.
to ask the guests.
But like I have a friend who was a producer for The Bachelor, and like people come out of that show messed up because they do terrible, terrible things to the cast.
Like what?
Like sleep deprive them.
Oh,
Cause fake drama, tell them that this person like is trying to steal their identity or something, and then like withhold food for certain, like, oh, the food's late, and do stuff.
we
to
talked
make them
about that.
amped.
Like where they give you tons of alcohol but withhold
Yeah, someone
water
from
and
Love is
food.
Blind claimed that they were like getting fed nothing but alcohol
Yeah.
and no water and no food.
Yes, and,
That's
like,
evil,
yeah,
dude.
And so like the person I know said like they would do stuff like when they're sleeping, they would fake like pipe leaks and stuff to keep them up, and they'd have to go outside when it's like either hot or cold depending on where it is, just in there,
So
like
weird.
and just so that like when they film at 7 a.m. they're all sleep deprived, and so everything sets them off, and then they would push them into these like sensual encounters with people that they're not connected to, so that it would cause drama, and it's very very disconcerting.
No wonder we're so screwed up as a society. Like, when that's the entertainment that we value, like, we can talk all we want about actors being prima donnas, but like, these people are actually being tortured on these sets, and we're like, keep doing it. This is fantastic.
Yeah, and I'm sure
the
there
Hunger
are
Games.
analogous situations for hosting daytime television talk shows, especially because those are female oriented. There can be so much like mean girl mentality and catfighting about that. I mean, we even know from like former employees of Ellen, the Ellen show, they said Ellen was like literally a demon spawn of a person that treated her own staff
a
like
Bachelor-esque show.
Oh, it wasn't The Bachelor.
Okay, not The Bachelor.
Not The Bachelor itself. I don't know about that, but a Bachelor-esque show.
Yeah, it's like, but the thing is, I think like hindsight being 2020, you look at Ellen and you knew that was always a facade.
I mean, yeah, only in hindsight though, because like society used to be more innocent.
It's why anytime any news that comes out about Mr. Rogers, I have to double check. I'm like, tell me he wasn't a pedophile.
Please.
Tell me. Okay, thank goodness. Good, we're good. Like, it's like, don't shatter my reality that badly. Like him and Bob Ross. Like, leave him and Bob Ross alone.
Bob Ross and who was the first one?
Mr. Rogers.
Okay, gotcha.
Like, as long as they're okay. Like, even that, like, he's going to start getting dragged, too, because have you seen those clips that are resurfacing of him where it's like, girls grow up to be girls, and boys grow up to be boys, and the trans
He didn't say women and men?
Boys grow up to be men, girls grow up to be women. But the idea was, like...
That's crazy, because in his time, in history, that was not even a response, like, to the contrary, to anything.
Yeah.
Like, in his mind, that was not responding to something saying otherwise. He was just stating a fact to him that was not disputed in that day and age.
But they love to retroactively go back to things and call you evil for something that was completely normal at that time in the world. Yeah. And that's the funniest thing about the world today is now things change so fast. Everything you said 5 years ago will be abhorrent and a problem 5 years from now.
You know what? I'm okay with that.
Mary's like, she's like,
whatever.
She's like, my hatred is evergreen.
Yeah.
My hatred will...
We're equal opportunity haters on here.
I would like to think
we're going to make fun of Danny Pintauro and Candace Bure for saying that they got PTSD. And James Cameron Bure.
Is she related to Kirk Cameron?
Yeah, it's just their brother and sister.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So
That's why she gets
They
this.
were also like hating on her brother, saying that her brother is to blame because he has extremist views that influenced her.
What, going to church and hosting like religious story hour at a church or at a library. Do you think that this is one of these things that this is gonna follow her forever? Like, she's never gonna outlive this. Like,
I don't think it'll ever have a massive impact, but it'll always be there.
Because she's kind of planted her flag in the best way possible, meaning the business side of things. So she's always gonna have the infrastructure around her to keep working. But it's like she's kind of like how I see. If you're not gonna be the business person of it all, she's kind of that roadmap to how you can be polite and keep the high road when going through. Like, every time somebody's mean to her, she's like, well, I'm sorry you feel that way. Like, she's like every time somebody
she literally is like, I love you.
Yeah. They're like, we hate you. We hope bad things happen. She's like, well, I love you. Like, which, to be fair, if you're unreasonably angry and unruly, that would just be infuriating. It would just make you, and like,
Doesn't make it the wrong response.
Part of me wonders if there's like deep down, she's like, I love you.
Ultimately, it doesn't matter because she is doing the right thing PR-wise. She is unbothered and doing her own thing, and it's doing well. The Great American Family Network is growing quickly. We released a video about it recently. You can go back on the channel and watch that.
Plus, she's got my love, which is really what matters here.
Yeah, and she's got our support. And as for the interview, it was Raven Simone that asked the more cringy and invasive question about his sex life. So
we are beyond, in my opinion, where people need to be afraid of this anymore. You know what I mean? Like, I understand 5-7 years ago you're afraid of what people are going to think, but everybody who has been quote unquote canceled is out better and more liberated. Like, oh, I don't have to care what you think.
You have to go through that first ritualistic experience where your stomach drops out and you realize that they've come for you.
But this is true, in my opinion, liberation, where an entire industry is like, we're going to destroy you. And she's like, try.
Yeah.
Try.
Yeah. Like,
and they can't do it now that
can't,
she's
yeah.
gone independent.
well, like, what's funny about that is like I think about it for me is like if this like I already have kind of like cover for that at this job because we're encouraged to be ourselves and to not follow some narrative. Like, look, I make fun of the overuse of the term woke as much as I do actually talking about wokeness in Hollywood. I don't want to be reliant on any belief system.
Yeah.
I want to call it like I see it on all this stuff. But if this, if something happens at this job, it's not going to stop me from going and working in a warehouse somewhere. Like, it's not going to prevent me. Like, sure, you might be mean to me on the internet, I guess, but I don't have to read that.
Yep,
like,
turn it off.
I just turn off the internet. It doesn't matter. So
Yeah, there's I just lost my train of thought.
Dude,
okay.
eventually you will get used to that. It's
Yeah.
the most infuriating.
Yeah.
Does that ever happen to you? Do you ever just lose your
Yeah.
train of thought? Like,
Yeah.
like sometimes, like because like doing this, doing that, I'm like reading the comments and then
I'll
like
just make a different point.
yeah, I turn back and I'm like say something even less intelligent, Brett. You'll just to keep the silence from growing too long.
Oh, I know what it was. It was you were talking about how things change so fast, and like you have to like constantly cover up what you said 5 years ago if you're one of these people, right?
Yeah.
It's like it's not the reason that she doesn't have to do that is because she is so rooted in a very fundamental way of like this is what the world is, and it will never change.
Yeah.
And even if you're not basing what you believe based off what the group around you is evolving
That's
to
got to be
believe.
unbelievably liberating.
And
As
none
a-
of the people criticizing her have those foundational
No.
beliefs that keep them rooted in reality. That's why this is going off the rails.
It's hard for me too because I am one of those like look there's a reason why I don't relish reading comments positive or negative because I do let stuff get to me and I try not to, and I do think that a lot of people that say that it doesn't bother them, I think that maybe it's true 80% of the time. 20% of the time it might be a cope. Like you have to be like a cyborg to have it not bother you.
Just depends what
ever.
you've been through, probably.
Yeah, like at a certain point, like once you get to a certain size, there's just so much of it that you just can't read. Like Joe Rogan's like, I don't read the comments. Like that would be impossible. It would be 9 full-time jobs to read the comments on Joe Rogan stuff, right? So you've moved beyond needing that. Like I don't know, I wouldn't be able to. Thanks for watching. Listen to full episodes of Pop Culture Crisis on Spotify.
Keep up with us on social media and make sure you subscribe and ring that bell so you never miss the show. Bye, guys.